something I wanted to touch on, and I thought about it when I were doing my evaluation, but I didn't actually talk on it. When you're making decisions, there's a few ways to make decisions, and that can impact the outcome of things. So you can make decisions with awareness or without awareness. Okay, so you can do it unawares or you can do it with wares. Yeah. And that breaks down into two more sections. So you can make good decisions without awareness or good decisions with awareness. And you can also make bad decisions without awareness and bad decisions with awareness. So when we make a good decision without awareness, it feels like we just got fucking lucky. That's what it feels like. We've just got fucking lucky, mate. It's not luck. You've got intuition and that kind of stuff that's perpetuating, you know. And sometimes you don't know the outcome at all. And it was literally just happenstance. And wow, isn't the world one big fucking miracle? This was great. And then you've got the ones with awareness. So I am aware that if I do this good thing, then this good thing will happen. Yeah. So I can guarantee that this good thing will happen. And so those are nice ones. What I want to talk about are the bad ones. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because it's really important to understand that the result is still going to be bad. Whether you add awareness or not, it's still going to be bad. And you have to be accountable for that. In child services, and I'm going to go down this route because they use the term there a lot. They also use it in law. So you're looking at the words negligence and neglect. So lawfully, child services use, you know, laws and stuff quite strictly when it comes to that stuff. Negligence is where you don't have awareness. You didn't know that what you were doing was bad, but it resulted in something being bad or going bad, or something bad happening. Yeah, so negligence is, I didn't know any better, but this bad thing still happened, right? Neglect is, I had full awareness that doing this would result in something being bad, something bad happening, and I still fucking did it, right? Either way, they both result in something bad, but it negates the level of accountability and responsibility to a degree. I wouldn't say too much, because the responsibility is still yours. But neglect, you didn't know better, okay? To argue negligence, you have to be able to prove that you genuinely didn't know better. And in this day and age, that's really fucking difficult because we've got the internet to our fingertips and we've got brains and we're all about awareness nowadays. And it takes 2 seconds to look something up or ask the millions of billions of people that's out there. You know, there's slim chances where accidents happen, where these events lined up so fast that it just happened. You know, we didn't have that time to ask somebody else or look it up, or things just happen. That is when it's an accident. But at the end of the day, the bad thing still happened and someone still needs to be accountable for that. You know, things need to change in order to make sure that that can't happen again. That accident can't happen again. Yeah, that negligence can't happen again. But the negligence where you didn't look it up or you didn't ask somebody, it's really hard to argue that nowadays. Really fucking hard to argue that type of negligence. There's no excuse when it comes to that type of negligence. There's a million people around you, you know. The reason why people tend to not ask other people or not look usually falls down to the fact that they've got some sort of pride or some sort of reluctance to look at themselves or admit things, or they're avoiding their own accountability and that type of stuff, or having to admit they need something, or they don't have, that they need to sort something, which is why that type of negligence is really difficult to argue with, because whilst we're very prideful people, it's not good enough to not ask or not look because you want to keep your pride intact. It's not technically negligence if you look at it like that. Do you know what I mean? It still is, but it's you've willfully chosen to be ignorant. These all break down into little sections of non-awareness and awareness. Like negligence where you're not aware tends to fall under accident. Negligence where you are aware is you're intentionally ignorant. That's a really bad one to argue, and try and fight your corner on. So, people still get held accountable. And that's the thing, the end result of this, no matter what level of accountability is there, you will still reap the repercussions and the consequences of those bad actions, those accidents, those negligent choices. Do you know what I mean? Whether you're aware or not. Neglect is the worst of the worst, because neglect is, I have awareness of these things, I have asked these people, I have this knowledge, I've read this stuff, I am aware that I should be doing this, or this is the way it is, and this is what's going to happen as a result. But I have chose to either do it anyway, or chosen not to do something on purpose so that it results in the bad thing happening. Right? You can't be unaware when you are neglectful. It's not a thing. You are always aware when you are being neglectful. And the reason why I brought up child services, they use that word a lot. You are aware that children need food, water, clothing, heat source, some level of comfort, an education, social interaction, a roof over their head, right? You are aware of these things. That's the way it has to be. That is a standard that's set to make sure they have some form of quality of life, yeah? A decent, basic standard of quality of life, yeah? To make sure that they live, yeah? So the word neglect is used a lot in those situations because you cannot be a parent and not know, yeah? You can't. You can argue negligence, which we've talked about, but then that breaks down into a couple of different areas again. So it's negligence where you're unaware and it was a fucking accident and I can't possibly have ever known that, but you'll still be held accountable. Or it's negligence where I was aware but I didn't do anything. I was aware to a degree that I should have asked, or I should have done this and other, I just didn't. That's a different type of neglect. Negligence, that's a really weird grey area. But yeah, so good decisions, you have the ones where you are totally aware, fully aware. Good decisions where you're not aware and it's a fucking fantastic miracle and wow. Or you might have some degree of awareness but not enough to know that it was going to be that fucking good, And then the ones that people don't talk about enough, being negligent and being neglectful, and what they look like. In relationships, people will often argue, well, they didn't know, or it was a mistake, I wasn't aware. Okay? When it comes to relationships, if you've said it 3 times, then that awareness level is there. You've said it 3 times. This isn't just a drop, an information bomb that was dropped on one passing. This has been said a couple of times. Yeah. You've developed a pattern of ignoring that. That's neglect. Yeah. Negligence is, I forgot. because I only found that information bomb that once, you only told me once, or you never told me, you know, or I never asked, even though something felt off, I never asked, you know, or it was an accident. I genuinely didn't know that was going to happen. You know, I didn't mean for that to happen. But when it comes to relationships, it's really important to look at, especially nowadays, because relationships are getting harder and harder. It's really hard to connect to folk nowadays and get decent, solid partnerships. It's really difficult. Everything's fractured, and it's because people aren't doing the work on themselves. They're not growing up. They're staying children in adult bodies. That growing up comes when you do work on yourself, you know. So it doesn't come just because you went on holiday a couple of times or travelled the world, or it comes from going through some shit and looking at yourself in an honest manner. And a lot of people don't want to do that. And parents kind of bubble wrap the kids as well, because they don't want them to be subject to the horrible world. And I get that, you know, but we're all kind of stunting each other's growth, which is really bad. We're all becoming flat pack, follow the leader, do as the other does, and, you know, play house. But to form proper long-standing connections, you have to look at, yes, you look at all the good stuff. Of course you do. I want this, I want that, you know, I want all these good things. Okay, but that means you have to address bad decisions and the consequences and where they're coming from, and be honest with yourself. And no amount of you telling somebody that they're doing all these bad things ever sinks in. They've got to be able to look at themselves and figure that out for themselves. You can't drill it into somebody. You just can't. It's impossible. You know, you can't make somebody a particular way. They're independent, they're autonomous, they can do what they want. Leave them to do what they want. They will learn either through consequence of bad action, aka you aren't there anymore, or that thing is broken, or, you know, whatever. Or they never learn and they start sinking into denial and delusion, and so be it. You know, so be it. But if you've got the ability to look at your actions and your choices, especially when something's gone wrong, and you can determine whether it was a level of negligence that's genuine negligence, or if it's negligence that's bordering neglect, or if it's neglect completely, then you're able to work on yourself properly and do a better job moving forward. And the problem is that I found from me doing that, there's only you doing it. There's only me doing it that I can see, at least. And I'm pretty good at judging folk nowadays, judging characters and figuring out what people are about. And so now I've kind of segregated myself and separated myself, which is kind of opposite of the whole procedure of things, because the old procedure is to make you better at being a better person and making connections. But that I'm only one person, it takes two to tango. If the rest of the peoples that need to be tangoing aren't tangoing, I've kind of put myself in a little separate box. But honestly, I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel bad about that. I would rather be in my box on my own than in that box where they are. I think that's not connection. I think that's attachment out of fear and loneliness and lack of function and purpose and whatever else, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, a little bit on choices and what negligence is and what neglect is, and why it's really important to look at those things. Nobody likes looking at the bitter truth because it's bitter and it's horrible. It's never nice. It's never going to be nice. It's shit. But you have to do it, you know? You have to do it. You have to do this, the horrible bits. And the more you do the horrible bits, the more good, like exponentially good, you get. I think, you know? The further you go into looking at all the bad stuff and addressing it, the further you go the opposite end to experiencing all the fucking good shit, you know? If you can grow up and be an adult, like a proper adult with wisdom, you can exercise your right to a better degree when you want to be a kid. I am very good at being an adult, to the point where I know when I can go full blown stupid mode. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can act like a fucking fool and enjoy every minute of it, and know when to turn on adult Steve and go do my business. Do you know what I mean? I am the adult, I am the teacher, I am also the child and the student. Yeah. And the gap can get really big between those, but you have to keep working on it to bridge it, and you know, keep them together. Otherwise you go too far and be an adult and you can't have fun anymore, or you stay a child in an adult's body, which again, it's really bad. It's really bad. You know, you've got to exercise yourself, and that means looking at the good stuff and the bad stuff. Exercise. Yeah, exercise.